As Eileen and the Minister have so eloquently mentioned, that this is my last Sydney lunch as CEO of the Foundation. It's, I guess after 30 years, I felt it's a good time to pass on to the next generation to take over the Hunter Valley Research Foundation. But I guess I was sort of contemplating it over that Christmas period, as you know, Christmas is a time for contemplating those sorts of things. I was not aware at the time that obviously somebody else, namely the Pope, was obviously contemplating the same situation. And so when, of course, the Pope announced his retirement, he did it with about 2 weeks' notice. And then the selection process seemed to be pretty straightforward. Just bring in a number of gentlemen with crimson robes, fly them in around the world, put them in a room with a small fire, and then throw a bit of charcoal onto the fire, change the smoke, and away you go, you've got a new CEO. Anyway, I was thinking about sort of writing this up for the board minutes as a selection process, but I was a bit anxious about the reaction that the audit committee might have in terms of how viable that might be for the future of the foundation. But looking down the dining room, I can see a number of large men in blue, which may well substitute for that large group that could be brought in to help the selection process. But having said that, I guess my concern that the Pope managed to be able to give 2 weeks' notice, I suspect that my time will be a bit more like waiting till the second coming before I actually leave the doors. But anyway, the process is underway for the selection of somebody to take over the role, which is indeed a challenging but an exciting one. With the announcement in yesterday's budget, it looks very much like an exciting time for Newcastle and the Hunter. The Port of Newcastle has always been a centrepiece of the Hunter's infrastructure, which has set the Hunter apart from other regions in Australia. It will continue to be such as a source of funds for the rebuilding of Newcastle, and of course the port will continue as the operational heart of the region. There'll be much discussion about this, but with only 10 minutes for me today, I will leave that for another time. You just heard from Hugh Mackay reflecting on the topic of what kind of society we're becoming, and I thought it might be appropriate to pass the same mirror over the Hunter and Central Coast, provide some comments, obviously at a different scale to Hugh's, but about how these communities have changed over the last 30 years that I've been at the Foundation. When I joined the Foundation in 1982, the Hunter region population was only 473,000 people. Newcastle's population itself had declined from 145,000 in 1976 to 140,000 in 1981. People were leaving the city. You can check the current values in our at a glance publication, which you'll see on your table in front of you, but it shows that the Hunter population now stands at 630,000. Interestingly enough, in the Central Coast, at that same period, there was only 94,000 people in the Gosford Wyong area, and this has now grown to over 320,000 people. Between the Hunter and the Central Coast, we now have a combined population of almost 1 million people, a sizable market in Australian terms. Just to give you some comparisons, Tasmania presently only has a population of 511,000 people. The Northern Territory has 231,000 people. I guess it's worth keeping in mind those comparisons when we think about our own region and the resources that are used for governance and infrastructure compared to those other areas. Up to the 1980s, Newcastle and the Hunter were synonymous with iron and steel making and basic heavy industries, yet the seeds of change had well and truly been planted. When I started, BHP was employing over 11,000 people, but at the time the writing was on the wall, this would not continue forever. The State Dockyard was beginning to wind down operations with its last 2 ferry construction contracts for Manly ferries almost complete. But at the time, alternative industries were already developing, with the aluminium production having begun at Kurri Kurri in 1969 and construction of the Tomago smelter underway at the time, which was then completed in 1984. You can see almost in that time period a cycle of change even within the aluminium industry. At the time, saleable coal from the region was about 28 million tonnes, and the port exported only 13 million tonnes. In 2012, the port exported 133 million tonnes. And of course, with most of the coal coming from underground mines within the region. At the same time, the expansion of the electricity sector was well underway with what was then the Electricity Commission of New South Wales constructing both Araring and Bayswater power stations. I recognise that some of the ministers and local members will have to go to answer questions, so thank you all for coming. In the early 1980s, it was almost impossible to get basic regional economic information, even with figures such as unemployment. But after a few years, and some of that as a result of lobbying from the Research Foundation, these figures did become available, and we found that unemployment in the region was in the order of 16% or more. Getting to year 10 was aspirational for students in the region, and we were still using programmable calculators to do our analysis. Those of you who recall that Texas Instruments, the Texas Instruments calculator on the belt was obviously a sign of an engineer or statistician on the make at the time. As you can tell, the Hunter region was a very different place. Even though I had grown up in the Upper Hunter, I was fortunate to be able to gain an even better appreciation of the benefits of the Hunter, having spent time away both outside the region and outside the country. I lived here in Sydney when you could pick up a townhouse in Paddington for $15,000, which I didn't do. And then a number of years in the US, of which there was great preparation for working in the Hunter and the Hunter Valley Research Foundation. My early memories of the Upper Hunter were very much about an agricultural community. Horses were an important part of growing up, and the major industrial development in those early years after the construction of Glenbourne Dam in the 1950s was the construction of Liddell Power Station. With some inkling that coal may become a major driver in the Upper Hunter, but at the time it seemed very distant, mostly underground and mostly in Cessnock. Communication and travel was also at a different scale, with most roads fairly basic with the occasional passing lane. Of course, by the end of this year you'll be able to get from Hornsby to the Singleton Macca's without having to pass a single traffic light. After that, it might be a different story. From the Upper Hunter, people travelled to Sydney via the Broke Road, which had many miles of dirt to discourage the faint-hearted. Getting onto the Pacific Highway at Peats Ridge, just near the Oak, was like bursting into civilisation with bumper-to-bumper cars, followed by a short thrill of being able to get onto the expressway at Mount White and then get off again at the toll gates at Hornsby after fumbling around for the 60 cents that you needed to get off the road. Things have changed. Communication was by phone and through the post office, and for those urgent matters there was always the telegram. How quickly things have changed. Newcastle surged onto the cultural scene with Bob Hudson's Newcastle Song, which of course gave national prominence to Norm, FJ's, the Hunter Street, which is now gaining further prominence, and the Parthenon Milk Bar. Today the cultural and creative sectors are a key part of the community, underwritten by the growth and importance of the university and associated sectors. Change has also been dramatic at the Foundation. By illustration, one of my early tasks in joining the Foundation was to assist in recording data from the Foundation's weather station. The task was to take weather readings at 9 AM and 3 PM every day, 365 days of the year. The data was recorded in a weather book, and then a phone call was made to the post office at Tighes Hill in the morning and afternoon to send a telegram to the Bureau of Meteorology with the recorded readings. That was only 30 years ago. Now, of course, everything is automated. Reflecting upon these types of memories give one pause to consider the significance of the changes we've experienced as a community and as an organisation over these last 3 decades, and obviously reflects the sorts of things that Hugh has been talking about. The Hunter has changed dramatically, moving from a heavy industry base into an economy which services, innovation and creativity are the key generators of jobs and wealth. BHP was a previous paternalistic presence within the region, but now the university, alongside major health institutions, are the employers of note, while trade and capital investment have been the characteristics of the resources sector that have been contributing to the local economy in recent years. Technology and the digital revolution has played a critical role in how we relate to each other and how we do business. When I was undertaking my PhD, we stored data and ran statistical programs through mainframe computers using punch data cards. The Foundation used a mainframe computer in Newcastle for complex analysis and had just invested in a desktop computer with a large 12-inch removable floppy disk. There was great excitement when we moved from the IBM golf ball electric typewriters to a computer with an attached electronic typewriter. These major changes in the structure of the regional economy and how we all do business have meant redefining what information the Foundation collects and how we collect it. In those early years, the Foundation had a focus on collecting physical resource information. As the need of the community changed, so did the demands on the Foundation. The community wanted current information which helped in forecasting business conditions as well as floods. As a result, the Foundation developed its Regional Economic Monitoring Program, which collected information directly from households and businesses and which could be benchmarked to similar information collected at the national level. While the Foundation developed a reputation for its analysis of regional economic conditions, it was obvious that there was more to the community than statistics about production and trade. Over the last decade, the Foundation began its work to track the overall well-being of our community. And I'm pleased to say that we've been able to undertake this work in both the Hunter and Central Coast regions. Our research demonstrates that among a wide range of issues, personal relationships, individual health and perceived relative wealth, the equity issue, are the main contributors to a person's feeling of life satisfaction. The summary of our most recent efforts sits on the table before you, this publication, Hunter Valley Research Foundation's Wellbeing Watch Scorecard. And this scorecard is our attempt to answer the question in the most comprehensive way, what type of region are we becoming? Hugh Mackay has written in his most recent book about what it means to lead a good life. As you will see, there is great concordance with what our wellbeing research is attempting to monitor in the context of regional life. I'd like to think that the regular publication of this scorecard will be a valuable evaluation tool for governments to use to assess how well their policies work in helping people improve their lives. Given my limited time today, I'll have to leave it to the publication to provide the rest of the story, and I commend it to you. As mentioned, this is the last time that I'll be addressing you in this forum, but I'd like to acknowledge the great partnerships that make the HVRF successful. There is a list of sponsors acknowledged by Eileen earlier, which they and you all are the who's who of the Hunter business community. Our board members are also a who's who of the Hunter, and give their time voluntarily to the organisation, thanks to Eileen and Marie Gleeson, Rory Gordon, Michelle McPherson, John McNaughton, Richard Owens and Bruce Tyrrell, who are a great asset to the organisation as well as the region. But as well as the board, of course, our staff form a great team and have made a unique approach to regional development and delivered many benefits to our clients and our regional communities. And even though I've been at the Foundation for 30 years, I'm not the longest serving employee of the organisation, with some that eclipse even my 30 years. So it's certainly an organisation that breeds strong loyalty. On this occasion also, I'd like to acknowledge the support that I've received from my family. Anyone who's undertaken an executive role, they're only too aware of the importance of having an understanding family to deal with the trials and tribulations of the task. To quote our research finding, being in a relationship, living in a family unit, having a support network were all associated with higher wellbeing scores, and it's borne out in this publication, and I can attest to that. In closing, I'd like to make the point that an investment in regional research is an investment in the future of regional New South Wales. Foundation has been an integral part of the evolution of one of Australia's preeminent regional economies and should serve as an excellent example of how governments can help regions to help themselves. It's been built on a partnership between the community and government, and I hope that we can reinvigorate that partnership in the near future. Thank you all for your support over the past 30 years, and I look forward to meeting up with you again in my post-foundation life. Thank you.